There ain't a critter in the swamp I won't cook. That's the first thing you gotta understand about me. If it crawls, slithers, hops, or swims through the muck, I'll catch it, gut it, season it, and slap it on the grill. Folks around here think I'm crazy, but I've been eating swamp food since I was a kid. Gator, catfish, frogs, turtles, even them nasty water bugs, I've thrown them all on the fire at least once. It ain't about being picky, it's about the flavor. Swamp food's got a way of tasting like the land it comes from. Like all that muck and dirt and water seep into the meat and give it that extra kick. Most folks, they get all queasy just thinking about it. Me, I don't care. I've got a cast iron stock older than some of these backwoods towns. And when I throw something on it, it don't matter where it came from. Hell, if I get sick, I get sick. Ain't no different than eating too many crawdads and getting the shits for a few days. It's part of life out here in the bayou. You roll with the punches. Now, I'll be honest. I've heard all the stories about the cursed parts of the swamp, the ones old-timers say you should steer clear of. They talk about haunted waters and spirits living in the trees, how the swamp's alive in ways you can't see with your eyes. I never paid it no mind. Superstitious nonsense, I figured. Until I wandered into a stretch of land the locals call the Soulmire. I'd heard the name before, but I'd always figured it was just some spooky name they gave to keep folks from venturing too far into the wetlands. But one day I found myself a bit lost. Hell, I get lost a lot out here and it don't bother me. The swamp is like a big old kitchen and you find things where you least expect them. So there I was, hunting gator, when I came across this part of the swamp I hadn't seen before. The water was thick, real murky, like someone had stirred it with a big old spoon, but that didn't bother me. I'm used to swamp water, all cloudy and brown like that. What did catch my attention was how quiet it was. No frogs croaking, no insects buzzing, no birds chirping, just dead silence. Usually the swamp's alive with noise. Even at its quietest, you hear something moving around in the muck. Not here. I should have turned back right then and there. Any sane man woulda, but I'm not known for my caution. When my belly's rumbling and I've got a hankering for fresh meat, there ain't much that'll stop me. And I'd seen the signs of something big around. Deep prints in the mud, broken branches where something had passed through. I figured it had to be the biggest damn gator I'd ever seen, and my mouth started watering just thinking about throwing that beast on the grill. So I followed the trail deeper into the mire. The mud got thicker, more like quicksand, sucking at my boots with every step. But I didn't care. I could almost taste the gator already, that sweet, gamey meat, sizzling on my cast iron. I was too focused on the hunt to notice that the ground wasn't just getting thicker. It was changing. The mud wasn't just sucking at me. It was pulling me, like it wanted me to sink deeper. I ignored the feeling in my gut telling me something was off. It wasn't until I saw her that I stopped. She came out of nowhere, this woman standing waist deep in the water, her long hair hanging limp over her face. At first I thought she was another crazy fool like me, out here looking for food. But when she turned her face toward me, I realized something wasn't right. Her skin was pale, like she hadn't seen the sun in years, and her eyes didn't look alive. "Help me," she whispered, her voice all thin and shaky, like she was barely hanging on. "I ain't no hero, but I ain't about to leave some woman out here to die either." "You lost, ma'am?" I called out, taking a step toward her. She didn't answer, just kept whispering, "Help me," over and over again, like a broken record. I moved closer, but the mud was damn near impossible to walk through now. It wasn't just regular swamp muck. It was like the earth itself was trying to hold me back, like it didn't want me to get any closer. That's when I noticed the water around her wasn't normal either. It was thick like oil, swirling slow and heavy around her legs. And then I saw it. Her feet weren't touching the ground. She was sinking, but not into the mud. She was being pulled down by the water itself, her body slowly disappearing into the black, oily muck. I stopped cold, my gut twisting with something I hadn't felt in years. Fear. I think you're stuck in something nasty," I said, my voice a lot shakier than I'd have liked. "Let me see if I can find something to pull you out." She didn't respond, just kept staring at me with those dead eyes. And then I heard it, this low, wet, gurgling sound, like the swamp itself was breathing. The water around her started bubbling, and I realized it wasn't just water. It was the mud, the muck, the water. It was all moving on its own, wrapping itself around her, pulling her down. I took a step back, my brain screaming at me to run, but my feet were stuck, caught in the same thick muck that had her trapped. That's when I saw the hands, dozens of them, pale and wrinkled, reaching out from the water, clawing at her, pulling her down. And she wasn't fighting. She was letting it happen, almost like she wanted to be taken. "Help me," she whispered again, her voice barely audible now. I don't know what possessed me to do what I did next. Maybe it was panic, maybe it was desperation, but I grabbed the one thing that had always gotten me through tough situations, my cast iron skillet. Now, I've grilled just about everything you can think of, but I ain't never tried cooking no haunted swamp. But in that moment I figured, if I could grill a gator, I could handle this. I pulled the skillet out of my pack, feeling its comforting weight in my hands, and did the only thing I could think of. I started hitting the mud around my feet with it, trying to free myself. To my surprise, it worked. The muck let go of my boots, and I stumbled back, falling into the water behind me. But the mud didn't grab me again. It was like it was more interested in her than it was in me. The woman was almost completely submerged now, her mouth barely above the water, and as she sank, I realized something horrifying. She wasn't trying to escape. She was being absorbed. The water, the mud, it wasn't just pulling her down. It was turning her into part of the swamp itself. And then I heard another voice. Ma'am, where are you?" It was a kid's voice coming from somewhere behind me. I turned, but I didn't see anyone. Just more trees, more muck, more swamp. But the voice kept calling. "Mom, where are you?" I spun around again, but there was no one. Just me and the dying woman. And then it hit me. The swamp was talking to me. It wasn't just alive. It was sentient. It was luring me in, using her, using the voices. I'd had enough. I turned and started hauling ass out of there, but the mud wasn't done with me yet. It started bubbling again, rising up around me like it was trying to drag me back. But I wasn't about to become no swamp food. And then I had an idea. A stupid, reckless idea, but the only one I could think of. I'd eaten just about everything this swamp had to offer. Why not eat the damn swamp itself? I pulled out my portable burner, one of those old-school, heavy-duty things I used when I needed to grill on the go. I dumped what little kerosene I had left onto the muck and lit it up. The fire caught, sputtering in the damp air, but it was enough to keep the mud from grabbing me again. With my skillet still in hand, I scooped up a chunk of the bubbling, oily muck and threw it on the burner. The stuff sizzled, and the smell was something between burning tires and wet moss. It was disgusting, but I didn't care. If I could eat frogs, gators, and water bugs, I could eat this. The muck hissed and spat on the skillet, turning from a black sludge into something that looked almost edible. Almost. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed a chunk of it with my bare hands, ignoring the heat, and shoved it in my mouth. The taste was indescribable. It was like eating a piece of the swamp itself, all the rot, the decay, the life, and the death. A few beers, talk about tailgating in style.